I would be prepared to pay a fair bit more tax. Depends what you get for it. What I've really objected to over the last few years is paying quite a lot of tax and getting absolutely sod all back in the way of actual services and the NHS and so on. I mean, basically, we're being ruled by robber barons up until now, and I've had enough of it.
Sunak and Starmer have been arguing over taxes. Sunak says Starmer will raise them, Starmer says he won't. But we've been talking to people in Soho Square, and they say one thing: they'd be happy to pay higher taxes for better public services. So why won't any of the parties do that? Would you guys be happy with an increase in tax if it meant that you're going to get better public services?
For me, 100%, yeah. I think there's countries, in Europe where the tax rate is much higher and the services are outstanding. And I think tax has always been pretty emotive in this country. And if you look at the lack of tax being paid by people who can most afford it and the state of the country after 14 years with this government, I think it speaks volumes, actually.
I mean, I've always been very happy to pay taxes because, I think that's the thing when you think about what we do get in terms of our actual taxes, it pays infrastructure and all these things. But I think particularly now, I think it makes people more resentful of taxes because those things have been cut and we're not seeing the benefit from it as such. If you think about when I was a kid and it was you could go swimming for £2.50 and it was everything was subsidised and you were able to get a lot more and you could see okay, you're paying the taxes, they're going towards these things. But now none of those things are accessible, train prices are going up, these are things that used to be nationalised. So it feels like you're getting less for the money you're being asked to pay, and obviously specifically on lower income groups is where the tax is being put up, and the tax isn't being put up on people that have lots of money and have hidden offshore accounts and all these things.
I was just reading today about evidence showing that not all the rich people flee the country when you put some taxes up, because it's thoroughly inconvenient to do so. But there's a whole load of things which are going quite badly wrong, and shareholders on the rail, on water, are taking vast amounts of money out and putting nothing back in the way of actually safeguarding those services. So I think we're actually in for a really rough time over the next 5 to 10 years because we're going to have to make up for that, whoever gets into power.
You personally, would you be happy to pay more tax if it meant that we had better public services?
Yes, generally. That's generally how I think about things. I'm more pro big government, so I'm happier with higher taxes if they provide something of value.
How much more tax would you be willing to pay?
It depends on what they spend it on, really. So it's one of those things where you have to trust the government to spend money properly. I wouldn't particularly trust either party at the moment. So
if Labour were saying we're going to raise your taxes by a few thousand a year, would you vote for them?
They would need to say why and what it's for, and not for defence. It should be for social things.
What would you like to see that money invested in?
Public transport improvements, more housing is a key issue for me, that kind of thing, stuff that improves the lives of people rather than going to big business.
So the main thing we're basically asking people today is all of the parties have said they're not going to raise income tax, but you guys, hypothetically, would you be happy to pay more tax if it meant that there was going to be better investment in public services?
Absolutely, yeah. Couple of pennies on the income tax to put money into the National Health Service, absolutely, yeah. And I understand why Keir Starmer doesn't want to say he'll do that, but I wish they would. Labour has tried to live down this reputation for being the party that squanders things and misrules and so on for so long, and this is going back at least to Tony Blair. They've wanted to try and shake off that image. And they know that there's a kind of populist argument against raising any taxes that will be used against them. So I understand it. But I'd like to think that the British electorate is grown up enough that they would accept the obvious reality, because people know that the National Health Service is struggling because of underinvestment.
They're obviously promising to, cut waiting lists, invest in other things. Do you think that that's going to be possible without increasing tax?
Probably not. No.
When you look at some of these very high net worth, wealthy people who are paying the same actual cash amounts in tax as working class people, how can that even be correct? That's not what tax is about. We are literally falling apart because there's been a lack of investment. The Tories have sold off every single part of our utilities, Royal Mail, and what's happened is textbook stuff. The prices have gone up and the service has gone down. This is not difficult to work out.
You don't have control about where your money goes. You know, every year it's like, oh, well, investment in Trident's been put up again. It's like, I don't really want to be paying like mountains of money to be putting it into nuclear arms because you don't have any input on where your tax gets put. So obviously, having been under like a Tory government where the spending doesn't align with where I want my money to be going, like I'm completely happy for my money to be going towards like public services and schools and roads and like healthcare, and like obviously NHS is so massively underfunded, but it's very hard for them, you know, they're saying they're not going to put taxes up, but it's like, well, I'm happy for taxes to be put up if they're cutting money where it actually goes, because, you know, at the end of the day, the amount of tax you pay in return for the services you get is quite minimal as to what you'd be paying at an upfront cost, because, you know, that you're not paying for like surgery or like you're not paying for medication. But I think it's just kind of hard that it's, you know, you don't have that transparency.
Would you yourself be happy to pay more tax if it meant that the public services were going to get better?
I would, but I'd like to see the people who earn the top earners in this country pay more tax to help. But everybody has to pay their way somewhere, so...
How much more do you think they should be paying, those people right at the top?
Right at the top, they should be paying twice as much as an average wage payer, at least. And if they're billionaires, then even more.
Unfortunately, I thought I used to be Labour, but I'm quite unhappy with Keir Starmer. I just don't. I feel like I'm quite on the left in terms of the spectrum, like the political spectrum, and I feel like almost strategically he's trying to appeal to more centre to like gain votes from both sides in one way or another.
Do you think that's maybe one of the reasons why he's refusing to, you know, say that he would increase income tax?
Most likely, yeah, just to appeal to as many people as possible. I don't know what will happen if most likely he will get into government, but I hope to see some change. But I'm quite concerned that maybe it's just the Tory party dressed in red.
I'm not even sure what every party stands for anymore, and I think I want to stop hearing from other parties what each other party stands for and actually find out from that party what they stand for. So yes, disillusioned, yes, undecided, which is why the manifestos coming out will be very important for me, and I would really encourage other people my age, and not just my age, but anyone in the country that's not sure, to actually read what they're saying, because if we're going to find out what change is going to happen in the country, it's going to come from the people that want to make that change.
Well, I don't know, would it be enough, but it's a lot more than the Tories are doing, I'm not in it. So, and I don't think private schools should be classed as charities, which they are. And I can't go to them, my kids can't go to them, so they're getting charities, and then our schools are having a budget on funds.
Shall I tell you what? I couldn't give a fig. I'm trying to use polite language here. I couldn't give a fig what Rishi Sunak says, because we were promised strong and stable government. We've had 5 prime ministers. Nothing can be worse than the government that we've got now. Well, maybe apart from reform. We've been promised so much. I mean, why the Tories are coming out with these incredible propositions and election manifestos now? Where were they all the last 14 years?